From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. Campaigning for the May 20th election in Venezuela has come to an end. President Nicolás Maduro held his final presidential campaign rally in the capital city, Caracas. In a festive atmosphere, supporters lined on the streets, while Maduro was joined on stage by Argentinian football legend Diego Armando Maradona. Maduro said he's ready for new victories and promised to lead major economic changes.
I saw with my own eyes in Maturin people prepared to defend Venezuela. People prepared to defend the country with everything they have. The government has made positive things, in spite of the many problems they face. The people say that you can't find anything in the stores, but the same companies that produce food also produce cigarettes and alcohol. So you can't find bread, but you can find beer. Why do you think that happens? So the people who want to establish the dollar as our currency should first remember their identity. It's not me who say it, but our history. The dollarized countries only get worse. This is my first vote and I'll give it to the revolution. I'm loyal to the revolution. As my president said, they won't come back.
And on the closing day of the campaign, candidate Henry Falcón returned to his home state of Lara. It was in this state that Falcón spent 2 terms as governor. The presidential contender held a rally in the capital of Barquisimeto. Falcón is the main contender against current president Nicolás Maduro.
The results of the election must be acknowledged by the government. The new president of Venezuela is called Henry Falcón. We will defeat the CNE, the government, Maduro and his party, all of them.
And the third main presidential candidate, Javier Bertucci, closed his campaign a day earlier in Valencia. Bertucci promised a solid economy and decent salaries for all Venezuelans. His events have had some of the largest turnouts, particularly for someone who just entered politics this year. He closed his campaign by calling on Venezuelans to go to the polls as the best way to stop the economic blockade. We now go to our correspondent Ian Bruce for the latest update from Caracas. Hello Ian, presidential campaigns are ending. Can you tell us more about what's happening and what can we expect from the upcoming elections?
Yes, indeed, Carla. Campaigning officially ended at midnight. We're now into the period of electoral silence with reporting restrictions in place here in Venezuela. During the course of the day, the National Electoral Council will be installing all the voting centers across the country, all 14,638 of them, with more than 34,000 electronic voting machines ready for Sunday's vote. The international observers who began their mission yesterday, just over 150 of them, they'll be receiving a series of briefings in the course of the day, having meetings here in Caracas before some of them tomorrow, Saturday, head out towards the different voting regions in different parts of the country. Now, as we heard, the 2 main candidates ended their campaigns with rallies on Thursday afternoon. Henry Falcón, in his home state of Lara, drew quite a large, lively crowd there. But interestingly, according to our own reporters who were on the scene, the crowd for Henry Falcón in Lara was not quite as big as the one that turned out for Javier Bertucci, the 3rd place candidate, the day before in Valencia. An interesting observation there. Neither of those two, however, compared with the very large crowd that turned out here in Caracas for President Nicolás Maduro's closing rally in the center of the city on Thursday afternoon. We were there and we talked to one of the people who's organizing a delegation of international observers from the United States. Let's listen to that. We're in the center of Caracas, in the Avenida Bolivar, where President Nicolas Maduro is holding the closing rally of his campaign ahead of Sunday's election. Now, this has been a historic site, the location of many large demonstrations during all these years of the Bolivarian Revolution. And again today, as you can see, it's a large and lively turnout. To talk about this election campaign, we have with us Jeanette Charles. She's from Venezuela Analysis, and she's also guiding a delegation of election observers here. Thanks, Jeanette.
Thank you for having me.
Tell me your impressions of the campaign. Does the size of this turnout, compared with much smaller turnouts I've seen at Henry Falcon's events, does that reflect the real balance of forces? What kind of a campaign has it been?
Well, I think for us at Venezuela Analysis, one of the major points that we're trying to talk about in our coverage and with our international delegation is the Venezuelan people's right to decide and determine their future. I think this manifestation, this protest, in support of the Bolivarian process kind of shows internationally and nationally that there's a continued support for the revolution, that people believe in the fight for the 21st century socialist process, not just in their own country, but across the region, and historically are following a tradition of different movements and peoples across Latin America and the Caribbean who have fought to challenge, U.S. imperialism, capitalism, and to fight for the rights of the people. And so this, as early as it is today, I mean, this is like 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We still have many hours to wait till Nicolas Maduro actually shows up. I know people are coming from different parts of the city, so it's really exciting. And for myself, I was here in 2012. During Chavez's campaign in 2013, for Maduro's campaign as well, and there is an overwhelming sense of support for the process that's undeniable.
One of the things that's surprised me, and I guess would surprise many people, is that given the obviously very great difficulties that people have in daily life at the moment because of the economic war, as they call it here, that there's still such a kind of lively, upbeat atmosphere. I mean, how do you interpret that?
For me, my family history is from Haiti, from the first Black Republic of this hemisphere, and I think people are committed in the same ways to the fight of the working class and know that this revolutionary process is unlike any other and is going to be the way in which people can actually build a new society, one that challenges the economic crisis. Any of the other candidates really are proposing either full retreat to neoliberalism and capitalism, or band-aid remedies. Whereas even with some of the political contradictions that we've seen and challenges that have come about because of the economic war, people are really trying to innovate, are really trying to change their conditions, and I think for that same reason, that's why people continue to be as lively as possible and as optimistic. I mean, really, Venezuela and the Venezuelan people offer a lighthouse in some ways for the rest of the region in terms of being able to continue to move forward and usher a different process.
Just tell me briefly about the delegation you're going to be helping during this election. What are they going to be doing? What are they expecting?
Yeah, so we have a delegation of folks mainly from the United States who will be here for a week observing the elections and also meeting with Venezuelans from different grassroots movements, also different officials, as well as civil society at large, to kind of get to know the reality behind the revolutionary process and to kind of break through what mainstream media is, preventing people from seeing. This is our second delegation as Venezuela Analysis to make that attempt to be a bridge between peoples and movements. And folks will be here in Caracas, will be around the coast. Folks will be meeting with women's groups, young people, cooperatives, the CLAP distribution networks, also learning about the history of the Guarimba violence and the opposition, understanding the impact of sanctions on everyday life, and as well as learning about just what are the projects that people foresee in the next few years.
Thank you very much, Jeanette.
No, thank you for having me.
So that's Jeanette Charles from the Venezuela Analysis. She's also helping one of the observer missions here for Sunday's election. And as you can see, an upbeat take both on this election process and the whole Venezuelan process that goes behind it. We'll have more later. So, less than 48 hours to go until the polls open in these elections, which President Maduro on yesterday said himself could decide the future course of Venezuela for the next 30 years. Of course, if he is elected on Sunday, President Maduro will face some very serious challenges. First and foremost, the economy, which he said it will be his absolute priority to try and resolve the problems there, Also, his call for dialogue with all sections, including possible restart of talks with the opposition in the Dominican Republic. That will not be easy, and especially this comes in a context, of course, when we know that many countries, the United States and its allies in Latin America, have already said they will not recognize the results of Sunday's vote.
Thank you very much, Ian, for that report. So we go to another story. As Ian just told us, international observers will be monitoring the Venezuelan elections, ensuring the transparency of the process. We talked also with professor and analyst Fernando Casado and asked him about the abstentionist section of the opposition and their possible reasoning for calling an election boycott.
I think that there is a collaboration between the MOOD, these candidates that decided not to run for the elections, together with some political actors like Juan Manuel Santos, President of Colombia, the ex-President of Spain, Felipe González, who have been stating that the fall of President Maduro is imminent. Also, international organizations like the European Union Parliament, the group of Lima countries, the United States, have done very harsh statements against the elections in Venezuela. So altogether, I think that this is clearly propaganda. What I think is that they are preparing the public opinion, international public opinions, for something else after the elections. And it's quite worrying because this propaganda could even leave the ground for an intervention or something like that, because the United States has been very harsh. I think that's why the MOOD candidate did not run for these elections, especially because they were ordered not to do it in order to try to portray the elections in Venezuela as not reliable, and then have the perfect excuse for something else afterwards as an intervention.
And we have last-minute news from the Vatican, where all of Chile's bishops have offered their resignation to Pope Francis. The bishops just made the announcement in a press conference. The decision comes after 3 days of meetings between the pontiff and the Chilean delegation, aimed at tackling child sex abuses by Catholic priests in the Latin American country. It is still unknown whether Pope Francis will accept some or all of the bishops' resignations. Meanwhile, Juan Carlos Cruz, one of the victims that met with Pope Francis last April, celebrated the resignation via Twitter, where he said that this unheard situation will change things forever. We'll take a short break now, but join us after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting.
¡Que viva el movimiento indígena!
Kuna, taita kuna, mama kuna. Kai pika mana yanga kaji saya kunchikchu hasta wakaring.
Nos retiraron los celulares y nos obligaron a conducir el carro a pesar de que no tenía neumáticos sino en aros, para una quebrada botar con el carro y las 4 personas. Apareció, decían que la prensa llegaba, se asustaron y luego los llevaron hacia la plaza de Cochabamba.
Nuestras fuentes de agua, ¿dónde que dejaron nuestros abuelos para defender? Yo les digo, nosotros ya estamos viejos, acá los señores también están viejos, pero los hijos de ustedes, los hijos de ellos, ¿qué agua van a tomar?
En la consulta popular dijimos ya no más minería en las fuentes de agua, parques nacionales, áreas protegidas. La minería continúa.
Es la peor vergüenza que han hecho las autoridades.
Welcome back. In Colombia, presidential candidate Gustavo Petro ended his campaign with a final rally in the capital city, Bogotá. Petro made a call for peace and social justice to transform Colombia and its society. According to the latest opinion polls, he's narrowing the gap with right-wing Uribista candidate Iván Duque. The first round of the presidential election will be held on May 27. If no candidate achieves an outright majority, the vote will go to a runoff on June 17.
Today we are, and that is what we inherit, one of the most violent societies worldwide, the biggest exporter of cocaine, one of the most corrupt states on earth. Is that what we want to maintain? We are preparing our plan for the Colombian society to build peace through social justice.
Also in Colombia, tens of thousands of people had to evacuate their homes after the flooding of the Cauca River at Colombia's largest hydroelectric project. Our correspondent in Bogotá, Paola Fernández, has more.
Continúa la crisis humanitaria en el Bajo Cauca antioqueño.
There is a red alert after heavy floods at the construction site of hydroelectric dam, Hidro Ituango. 12 municipalities from 4 departments have been affected, forcing thousands of people to leave their homes and stay in shelters. Many of them had to sleep inside a sports arena, used as a shelter by the victims since they haven't received any humanitarian help from the government.
Dijeron que han tenido que pasar la noche sentados en las graderías de los coliseos.
Let's go to Peru, where Congress passed a bill to impose chemical castration on rapists that abuse children under 14 years old. In this first vote, the Peruvian Congress also passed life imprisonment penalties, as well as the non-prescription of sexual crimes. The bill will need a final approval next week. Feminist organizations say that strong sentences will not be the solution. For them, education and more protection for women and girls are the only ways to solve this problem. Brazilian police have arrested more than 200 suspects in the country's biggest crackdown on internet child pornography on Thursday. Thousands of police were involved in the day-long raids across 24 states. Close to 1 million pieces of pedophile content were uncovered by police. The authorities have been preparing for the burst for months as complaints against online sexual exploitation of children in the country kept rising. In Cuba, there is a strong LGBTI activist movement that has been holding events throughout May. Our correspondent Laura Prada is in Havana with more details.
Hello, yes, nice to greet you from Havana. Indeed, today, 17th of May, Cuba celebrates the day against homophobia and transphobia. In all the country, activities have been taking place since the 4th of May and will end tomorrow, 18th. These activities also not only are taking place in Havana, which a big conga around the city took place last Saturday, but in different provinces of the country. For example, in Santiago de Cuba, a huge demonstration took place and activists gave away condoms and brochures explaining how to protect people from sexual transmitted diseases like HIV and other sicknesses. Also in Pinar del Rio, the most occidental province of Cuba, there is taking place today a big demonstration in the street and all activities concerning the days of celebration, the season of the Cuban season against homophobia and transphobia, moved to Pinar del Rio, and there are taking place different activities, workshops, and people are sharing and talking about how Cuban society can be more inclusive. This is what's been taking place here in Havana, and I expect that in the rest of the world also these activities have been taking place with much inclusivity, like here in Cuba.
That was Laura Prada from Havana. The official residence of the Chilean president, La Moneda Palace, was illuminated on Thursday evening with the colors of the LGBTI flag to commemorate the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, and Transphobia. The rainbow colors on the presidential palace marked the end of a campaign boosted by the National Movement for Homosexual Integration and Liberation to promote tolerance across Chile. This commemorates the date of May 17, 1990, when the World Health Organization removed homosexuality from its list of mental illnesses. We'll take one last short break, but join us after this video from our multimedia team. Welcome back. Ebola has spread to many densely populated cities of the Democratic Republic of Congo, escalating fears of an epidemic outbreak. 23 people have died of the infection so far. And on Thursday, also new 11 cases have been reported, bringing the total of infected people to 45. The World Health Organization will hold an emergency meeting to discuss the danger of the Ebola upsurge. The worst Ebola epidemic in West Africa was between 2014 and 2016, which killed more than 11,000 people and infected over 28,000 across Guinea, Sierra Leone, and Liberia. US President Donald Trump has warned North Korea's Kim Jong-un that he should make a deal to give up his nuclear weapons program or face the same fate as Libya's colonel Muammar Gaddafi.
The model, if you look at that model with Gaddafi, that was a total decimation. We went in there to beat him. Now, that model would take place if we don't make a deal, most likely. But if we make a deal, I think Kim Jong-un is going to be very, very happy.
The Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi was murdered by NATO-backed fighters in 2011. The U.S. spearheaded the brutal regime change operation after Gaddafi discontinued his nuclear weapons program in 2003. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has defiantly made yet another foreign visit to meet with his main ally, Russian President Vladimir Putin. Putin is cited by Kremlin sources as telling Assad that Russian forces will begin withdrawing from the country. He is quoted as saying, "Given the victories and successes of the Syrian army in the war on terror, foreign armed forces will start leaving Syrian territory." The Kenyan LGBTI community has marked International Day Against Homophobia and Transphobia. The rallying event offers an opportunity for people to get together and reach out to one another across the world. It comes just days after the Kenyan Film Classification Board banned the homegrown romance of two teenage girls called Rafiki, the first Kenyan film to be shown at the Cannes Film Festival.
But is there anything that the international...
Also in Spain, people celebrated the International Day Against Homophobia. Our correspondent in Madrid, Eduardo Marín, has more.
On May 17th, Spain joined celebrations for the International Day Against LGBT phobia. People celebrated 28 years since the World Health Organization removed homosexuality from their list of mental illnesses. Spain is one of the countries that has developed protection for LGBT rights the most, especially after 2005, when they became one of the first countries to legalize homosexual marriage. However, there is still a lot of work to do. Hate crimes against the LGBT community have increased. In 2016, the rate increased by 36% compared to 2015. A march to protest hate crimes against LGBT people took place in Madrid, starting at Plaza de la Villa at the old City Hall.
That was Eduardo Marín from Madrid. An explosive eruption at Hawaii's Kilauea volcano has sent ash 9,000 meters into the sky. Residents were warned to take shelter from the ash fallout as toxic gas levels spiked in a small southeast area where lava has burst from the ground since the eruption began 2 weeks ago.
The interesting part.
Kilauea is one of the most active volcanoes in the world and has been erupting continuously, though not explosively, for more than 30 years. And with that, we come to the end of this news brief. But as you know, these and other stories, you can find them on our website, telesurtv.net/English. And be sure to follow us also on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.